No one told me the right way to go about this, so I'll figure it out for myself. 'Cause how much is too much to give you? Well, I may never know, so I'll just give until there's nothing else. Yeah, I'll give until there's nothing else.
In order to get an idea of how Catholic Charities works as an organization, we interviewed the director of Catholic Charities in Spokane, Rob McCann.
Today, you would never guess that he wanted to become a lawyer. His older brother actually went into law school, and his parents kind of pushed him towards that. So after high school, he graduated and went to Fairfield University. During his third year of undergraduate studies, he started realizing that he did not have a lot of community service, so he enrolled in an Ecuador program over the summer with the Jesuits. During the interview, to get accepted to this Ecuador program, the Jesuits asked him why he wanted to go on this program. He responded, in quote, "To improve my chances into getting into law school." This is to show how much this man really didn't think about community service.
You know, if you come out of Gonzaga and you try it a few times at House Charity, and as a result now you're going to do it the rest of your life, it's not necessarily a victory for Catholic Charities, but it's a victory for communities all across the country.
Okay, so obviously we've seen that Catholic Charities does important service work for the disadvantaged of the community. Now let's take a closer look at exactly how it works that makes it so effective.
So one of the things that allows Catholic Charities to make such an impact actually stems from Rob's 5-star mentality. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when he says this, he actually means it in both a literal and figurative way. So when they were designing the new facilities for the House of Charity, they actually went all the way to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and spoke with the architect who designed the 5-star hotel there and said, hey, we want you to design our entire new shelter. So everything in the House of Charities is completely top of the line, which, as you can guess, is really atypical for this kind of shelter. And the 5-star mentality that Rob put into building the place, he actually transferred over to working with his staff and the people that they serve. And this is actually a really cool and unique style of leadership because it gives everyone a sense of worth and importance, which empowers them to then invest in the shelter. And basically the outcome of this is that they don't have to worry about employing as many staff or guards or anything else because the people that they serve themselves are actually self-motivated to take care of the House of Charities and keep everyone in line and keep things running smoothly.
So Catholic Charities in general, and the House of Charity in particular, runs by an inverted pyramid style of organization, as Rob was calling it. Basically means that Rob is the last to know in any important decision making. The clients are the first people they ask. For example, they're building a new transitional housing center right next to the House of Charity. And how they started the plans for this new housing center is first asking the clients, what do you want? What do you want in your new shelter? Because this is for you. And they basically said they wanted one that was very close to the House of Charity because that's where a lot of them get their 2 staple meals a day, breakfast and lunch. And after they had that input from them, they asked the staff, now what do you need in a new shelter? The staff essentially wanted a certain amount of kitchen equipment, a certain amount of rooms and beds for the people they're going to have in the shelter. Then they go to the Board of Trustees and ask them, okay, what can you afford, what can you put in, and can you draw some plans for this new building? And then they ask Rob, who's the director of the entire Catholic Charities, this is what we're thinking, can you put your stamp of approval on it, basically. So that's how they run the organization in general. I asked Rob if his organizational model could work in any setting. For example, a for-profit institution seen as how Catholic Charities is obviously a charitable institution. And he said he thought it could work very well in any setting. He believes it works best in his particular non-for-profit organization. But he does say that the more you do from the bottom up in any setting, the more accommodating you're going to be for all the clients, everyone you serve. So though he thinks it's particularly suited to his own non-for-profit organization, he does say that a bottom strategy will empower people at any sort of organization.
In a for-profit environment, the goal is the bottom line, is making money. Typically, a bottom-up strategy doesn't work in for-profit, but I would also argue that the best businesses out there are the ones that most closely listen to its customers.
So in the future, some of the things that Catholic Charities and House of Charities specifically are trying to implement are goals for how they want to run their system. They are definitely trying to be less dependent on the government and more self-sufficient. And they're trying to do this through all of the donations that they receive and any of the fundraising they do. They want it to go directly to their client base. And their whole mission is for the clients. And that's why the inverted pyramid works so well, because they're working for the people, and that's why they need to see what the people want. Their biggest problem is funding, and so that's what they're working on the most and trying to create awareness for themselves so that they can become more self-sufficient.
We asked Rob how the various locations of Catholic Charities around the nation interacted. He told us that control is largely localized in each individual city or region. Each branch of Catholic Charities essentially governs itself. However, the branches do interact with other branches across the nation.
We share information on policies and procedures, and we share architectural plans. If someone wants to build farm worker housing in Florida and they like what we did in Pasco, we'll send them the plans.
Charities is obviously a Catholic institution, but when we asked Rob what that looked like in his own particular locale, he said something interesting. He says, "We don't serve people because they're Catholic, we serve people because we are." One thing he said to us was that the idea of a transcendent, benevolent God is a huge part of helping people center their own lives around what is actually important. Essentially, Catholic Charities does not force their Catholic identity or affiliation upon any of its clients. There are priests available in the facilities. Some people ask about how do you become Catholic, how to become part of this faith, but it's not a condition of employment. And he actually had an interesting story to tell us. In his time in the JVC, he was in a refugee camp, and one day these evangelists came to his camp and just started basically saying to people, here's some bread and water, we'll give it to you if you become, whatever denomination we are. And the people didn't know the language too well, but mostly they just wanted the bread and water, so they said, yes, of course, we'll convert today. By the end of the day, the evangelist said, praise God, we have 2,000 new converts today. And Rob remembers watching this and being absolutely confounded and saying, this isn't a real conversion experience, what is this? One of his friends said, hey, watch this, I'll show you exactly how effective they were today. He took a melon, went over one of the same families and said, look, here's a melon. I'll give you the melon if you, profess to believe in this melon. They just said, oh, amen, praise the melon. So Rob tries very hard not to be like those evangelists he knew in his own organization. He doesn't force people to convert as a condition of being accepted. He really tries to meet them where they are.
What ultimately makes Catholic Charities different? A transformational leadership styles. Other shelters expect people to fulfill their self-esteem needs first, such as getting sober, getting clean. Transformational leaders recognize that there are other needs that must be filled. People in, regardless of where they're at, they fulfill the physiological needs of food and shelter first. Without your basic needs to live, you're not really going to be focusing on getting yourself clean. What does all this serve in the end? Ultimately, their mission to meet people where they are at. You see, Catholic Charities treats people in the way, or sees people the way they see the food that is donated to them. They're pretty beat up, sometimes they're a little moldy, but ultimately when you're able to look past all that, you see that there's a lot of enormous potential inside.
There's nothing